So I'm actually gonna go ahead and say this might be a first for Whiskey SV or Whiskey Tube. I'll call it the Canadian Funk.
Welcome to Whiskey and SV. I'm your host Sam, and tonight we're going to be drinking some Found North whiskey. Specifically, we're pitting the latest two releases from Found North, the Batch 9, which is aged in ex-Ruby ports, to the Helldiver, which is the second release from their High Altitude series. And we're joined by our esteemed guest, Tam.
Glad to be on your show again, Sam.
Thank you, Tam. All right, cool. So I got my first media sample ever. Thank you very much, Found North. It has been a journey to convince a whiskey producer that I love to give me a free sample.
Yeah.
But it's as much as I love the brand and appreciate the free sample. I paid for the full bottles, two of mine, and Tam bought his own.
Yeah.
So we're going to be as unbiased as possible.
Yep.
Of course, when you like a brand, you're going to be somewhat biased, but hopefully we can do a good job of being as unbiased as we can be.
Exactly.
All right, so Tom, you want to tell everyone about these batches while I pour?
Yeah, definitely. So this is the Batch 9. It is the latest batch release from Found North, in which they mix a total mash bill of 91% corn, 8% rye, and 1% malted barley. I actually had a very, very nice experience with Nick bringing his samples directly here to the Bay Area. For us as San Francisco Bay Area whiskey group to mix and blend our own Batch 9
That's
and
amazing.
to compare it
Wow.
to their actual Batch 9, which he said is 95% done from his sample.
How many samples did you have to
We had actually 6 different quadrants of different whiskeys.
Oh, wow.
And those 6 different whiskeys make this single batch, which is crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, Nick is really fun because he's, whenever we've met him, which has been a couple of times now, he's very he likes to teach people, right, about his blending process, which is great, and he does a lot of classes. Okay, so I'm gonna put 3 and 4 on the Helldiver. I'm gonna put 1 and 2 on the Batch 9. And we will make a switch, so we'll keep them in the same order as these. So I will give you this, and I'll take this. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna leave the room. I'm gonna have you shuffle them the same way, and then we'll do the same. So when we're tasting them, we'll have the same thing.
Yep.
All right. I will leave the room, and please go ahead. Let's do it.
Let the flight commence.
All right. So let's start by the right one first.
Okay.
I want to open them so they can air a little bit. So what I get always on these Found North releases is just this really like candied caramel note that I enjoy a lot. And it's definitely there on both of these releases. So in many ways, there's like that common DNA thread there.
So I'm actually gonna go ahead and say this might be a first for Whiskey SV or Whiskey Tube. I'll call it the Canadian Funk.
The Canadian Funk.
This is it's also in some things such as Crown Royal and other Canadian whiskey. It's a candied, almost grapish, like very molassesy kind of smell to it, and it's reminiscent in almost all Canadian whiskeys. And why that reminds me so much is if people had Inniskillen wine, this reminds you a lot of that, especially on the nose.
Very cool. Yeah. What are some other notes that you are getting out of this?
Deep, rich wood, some rye spice.
Yeah, it's surprising to me because even though the mash bills have a lot of corn, they're majority corn, like 84 and 80 something percent corn, right? What is this one? 91%. Wow. 91% corn, but when I smell it and when I drink it, even I think I get a lot of rye spice, which is interesting. And I guess that's why they call Canadian whiskey that's even when it's not a rye, they call it rye whiskey.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, let's try this. Yeah. There's a very kind of a Rick House, old, dusty character to it.
Yeah.
So I recently tried a lot 40 cast strength.
Wow.
Which we can compare maybe at the end of this if you have time. And the lot 40, I believe, is not such old whiskey. So there's a very slight amount of this characteristic. I think with this being such older whiskey, I guess the youngest one in this is 19, and the youngest in this one is 15, right?
Exactly.
But there's definitely like this aged sort of oak characteristic to it. That makes it very interesting. Yeah, if I didn't know any better, I would say this is a rye whiskey. I mean, it definitely has that like rye spice. Yeah, that's very spicy.
It also has like a really dark oak presence on the mouth in comparison to the rye as well. And then you can really taste the age with this oak presence. Are you getting a lot of the ruby port?
It's interesting that you should say that because I definitely think there is some sort of fortified wine in there. I don't have enough experience with ruby port to know. You know, I think the batch. The previous batch was Madeira, which is also some sort of Portuguese wine, fortified wine. What is this actually? Is this like cognac or something?
It is actually
sherry cognac.
Sherry.
Oh, interesting.
PX sherry cask and cognac.
Okay. Yeah. Can I tell the difference between PX and ruby port?
No,
probably not.
But for PX sherry and Oloroso sherry, I think we can see that.
Yeah. But the majority of what I'm getting on the nose for these is that like rye spice plus nondescript fruity notes. So it's very hard for me to tell those apart. So if you tell me this is like, is this ruby port versus sherry or some other thing, I'm not really sure. So let's let's go to this one and see if there's anything like different here that.
Wow.
I get this is more mellowed out for me.
Yeah.
I get a little bit more like a rounded character to this one.
Exactly. Like it feels like it fills your nose versus goes straight at it.
Right.
Oh, you can definitely tell the sherry is coming through around. Almost bubblegum.
Yeah, I get some like grapey notes as well. It's just like fruity grapey notes. Honestly, I think there's not that much of a difference between these two in terms of like enjoyment. I do find this one to be a little bit more smooth and well-rounded overall.
Yeah.
And to me, that kind of says that it would be the older aged one.
Yes.
This is supposed to be like the flagship, series.
Yeah.
So, I do wonder if this should be the Helldiver. But if I was a betting man right now, I would say this is the one that I enjoyed the most, and maybe it's the Ruby Port. And my favorite whiskey of all time is the Redbreast 27, which is a Ruby Port finish.
Yeah.
So, but this is not at all the same notes as the Ruby Port, the notes I get in the Redbreast 27, because the Redbreast 27 you get this jackfruit, a lot of sort of Asian tropical fruits
that you will say.
But this, not so much. I do have definitely a preference for this one.
Yeah, I actually the same way as you have a preference for this one. I also feel similar because for me, I can taste the way that everything is smoothed out in this is just a step above this one. Because with this one, you can actually still taste some of the grain component of like the rough edges of like a corn or a barley.
Interesting.
Yeah. It is not as well rounded on the tongue. Is the best way I can describe it to the audience.
Don't get me wrong; it's still an amazing whiskey. I mean, when I go back and forth, I mean, if it wasn't a side by side, I don't honestly think like if you handed me in a vacuum and you asked me which is which, I probably wouldn't be able to the difference.
Exactly, because I feel like they both have that oaky presence in the finish.
Okay, so yeah, I think overall, um, for availability, I think these were around the same price, right? I think their MSRP was around 160 ish, 160, 165, maybe 170,
165, and this was 180.
maybe 180.
Yep.
Okay, so slightly more on this one, but
Mhm.
realistically, the Helldiver was way more harder to get.
I
You
agree.
were not able to get
I
one.
was not.
So, but I think. What do you think? Is it worth that much money? And I mean, who would you recommend this to? Who would you like say should get this versus like other stuff that you can get for this? Because it's a lot of money to pay
It is
for
a
a
lot
whiskey,
of
right?
money. But I would honestly recommend to everyone, like, these are two phenomenal whiskeys, both really good mouthfeel, really, really good flavors of that gentle sweetness that you guys like for all the bourbon heads. And it also has a rice spice kick, especially on this one.
Mm-hmm.
This one is definitely more well rounded, more smoothed out.
So we don't know yet, right? We should
Mhm.
do we should actually look at our
Mhm.
numbers to see. This is number one.
Mhm.
So this is actually is this one.
Wow.
Yep.
You preferred the
Number one
Mhm.
was this one, right?
Found North,
Was the
batch 9.
was the batch 9, right?
Yeah.
And this is number three. So and for you, it should be the same, right? It
So
should
for
be
me, what is this number?
this should be four.
Is that 4? Can you tell?
That is four. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So we do both prefer batch 9, the
We
19
prefer
year.
batch 9.
Yeah,
That's
the 19
crazy.
year.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's crazy because it is higher age, right? I mean, I understand that this is supposed to be like the high flying whatever series, but
Mhm.
for people who miss this, and um, honestly, like you're much better off getting Batch 9. It's cheaper, it's more available,
You saw it here.
it's smoother, right?
It's smoother.
Yeah.
That's honestly surprising. So that means that the one of the batch they produced this year is more well rounded than their high altitude.
Okay. Well,
That's awesome.
that is that. I think what we could do is, as an extension of this episode, I think at this point, if you got what you want, feel free to leave. But we're gonna do a kind of an extension to this episode,
Mhm.
where I think we should try the Lot 40 cast strength
Yeah.
and see how that compares to these.
That'll be great.
Yeah, because that's another Canadian whiskey. All right, so this is the Lot 40 cast strength, and it's also finished in port casks. So I guess like Port Ruby, but I think the port casks in this are probably tawny port. It says in port seasoned French oak casks.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're actually port seasoned. Anyways, I will put a picture of this up later, but there it is.
Mhm.
But let's try this because this is also a Canadian whiskey that's like relatively not easy to get,
Mhm.
but something that probably makes sense to do a comparison with. All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Completely different.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with this is actually rye whiskey.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, this is like I think maybe 100% rye,
Wow.
or at least like a good amount of rye. I'm not sure. I'll check later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think the sweetness is missing because from corn you obviously get a lot of sweetness, right?
Mm-hmm.
This and it's probably just a trick of the mind that I see this purple and I think of purple color when I smell this.
Or is it that Canadian funk that comes from the grapes?
Maybe,
or aging?
maybe.
Yeah.
I definitely get like that they are in the same family of things in somehow,
Yeah.
but I don't know like how I don't know how to put my finger on it. It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like I really wonder like what the cold climate, of Canada has effect on the aging of whiskey. It's very
yeah. So this is a completely different experience. This is like you're getting. I'm getting like a lot of these sort of like prune and yeah. I keep thinking of prunes, but I don't know what else I'm thinking.
I would think of stewed fruits mixed with
Stewed
star
fruit.
anise and cardamom and cinnamon. It's a very like herbaceous and spicy experience.
Yeah, let me go back to these a second.
I actually wonder if we
Oh
did
man, these are so much sweeter.
I think that's with the corn, right? The higher corn. Oof.
Right. Okay, so yeah, maybe it's worth dropping a few drops of water to see how these fare. I think I did a little bit more than a few. Oh man, these are so sweet comparatively.
Yeah. I guess that's why we like the Foul North style. It's like that really sweet.
The American palate.
The American palate.
Right. Yeah, it's a completely different character.
This changed 180, guys. Like from like a stewed pot, it's now almost like a honey brown sugar slash dark chocolate caramel.
Interesting. I'm getting a lot of like still like kind of fruity, like pruny notes. Yeah, for my money, I think definitely like the Found North. Even though I think I bought this from Canada for like 100 Canadian dollars, so like 78-ish US. It's actually hard to come by. It's not easy to get, but you know, the MSRP is relatively reasonable.
Yeah.
But I do like the experience. I think it's cool. But you know, for my money, I think again, I definitely prefer the Found North.
Yeah.
Despite the much heftier price tag.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think Batch 9. Yeah, I think I agree. Batch 9 is definitely like the outstanding piece here.
It's outstanding, and seeing how it's available right now, still, guys, reach out.
Yeah, definitely worth getting for sure. I think so. All right, cool. Well, thank you for joining us again for this episode. We had a great time. Thank you, Tam, again.
Yeah, thanks.
And yeah, let's cheers to our favorite batch. Cheers.